Okay, let's dive right into this. Look, if you're gearing up for your Series 99 exam, I can almost guarantee you've hit a massive brick wall with margin rules. They're dry, they're confusing, and honestly, they're packed with outdated info that will literally rob you of points on test day. But today, we're ripping the Band-Aid off. We're going to visually break down exactly how the new intraday margin standard actually works step by step, so you don't just recognize it, you completely own it.
But hey, real quick before we get into the weeds, this explainer is brought to you by CertFuel. If you're sick of studying the hard way, you gotta check them out at certfuel.com. They've got a full Series 99 course loaded with adaptive study quizzes that actually learn where you're struggling, smart flashcards, and my absolute favorite part, unlimited practice exams weighted exactly like the real thing. It is a total game changer. All right, back to the margin rules. I want to hit you with a massive pattern interrupt right out of the gate. We're talking a huge exam trap here. If your study materials are rambling on about the pattern day trader regime, counting day trades, stressing over a $25,000 minimum equity requirement, or day trading margin calls, literally erase it from your brain. It's dead. The margin rule completely dropped the pattern day trader designation. Today, the whole shebang is about the intraday margin standard, which is very much alive. The exam is absolutely going to try to bait you with those old rules. Don't fall for it. Day trading isn't measured by counting trades anymore. It's all about what a day's transactions do to an account's margin cushion. So, how do we actually measure that cushion? Well, let me introduce you to a pretty critical concept, the intraday margin level, or IML. Let's spell that out in your brain. Intraday margin level. Basically, this is the cash a customer could withdraw at a specific point in time and still meet the required maintenance margin. Let's bring in our first character here, Cara, the client. Cara treats her margin cushion like a casino. She makes incredibly chaotic, high-speed trading decisions at all hours of the day. When her account is short of the required margin, her intraday margin level is the additional cash she'd have to deposit. And by the way, that's always written as a negative number. Think of the IML as Cara's financial breathing room at any given second. Breathing room she is constantly trying to suffocate.
Now enter Ollie, the ops associate. Ollie's job is to monitor Cara's account, and right now, poor Ollie is sweating profusely. Why? Because Cara just triggered an IML-reducing transaction. What exactly is that? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's any activity in the account that lowers her intraday margin level. If Cara buys something, bam, she lowers her cushion. If she sells something short, she lowers her cushion.
And actually, this brilliantly highlights our next major exam trap. Listen to this. A withdrawal counts. Let's say Cara didn't make a single trade today. Zero. All she did was impulsively withdraw 10 grand in cash for a spontaneous trip to Vegas. Guess what? Ollie still has to flag this as an IML-reducing transaction because taking cash or securities out of the account reduces her margin cushion the exact same way a trade would. The exam will definitely try to trick you into thinking only trades count. They do not. Withdrawals count too. No transaction, no determination. But the literal second she takes money out, Ollie has to go to work.
So let's move to and see how this actually builds into Ollie's workflow. It's basically a four-step chain reaction. Step 1, Cara triggers that IML-reducing transaction by trading or, impulsively pulling out cash for Vegas. Step 2, that action plunges her margin cushion right into the red, creating a negative intraday margin level. Step 3, because she hit the red, the firm determines an intraday margin deficit. And step 4, Cara has to satisfy that deficit as promptly as possible. All right, pause the explainer for a second. Seriously, take a moment and think about this question. Let's say Cara goes totally wild at noon and completely tanks her margin cushion. But by 4 p.m. at the closing bell, she's miraculously wired in funds and her account is fully margined. It looks absolutely perfect. So, does Ollie still have to issue an intraday margin deficit for that day? Lock in your answer in your head. Got it? Okay, the answer is yes, he does. Major exam trap right here. The measure for the deficit is the absolute worst point of the day, not the closing balance. An account can end the day completely green, fully margined, singing Kumbaya, and still have an intraday margin deficit. Why? Because the deficit is pulled from the largest negative intraday margin level reached, in absolute value, during any transaction that day. Cara cannot just hide her midday mess-up by slapping a Band-Aid on it at the buzzer.
Let's put these two easily confused terms side by side because test writers love swapping them to mess with you. On the left, we've got the intraday margin level. That is the account's margin cushion at a specific moment in time. It fluctuates constantly, up and down, positive or negative.
Now on the right, the intraday margin deficit. That's the final, official score for the day. It captures the single worst negative reading from the left column, expressed as an absolute value. Basically, the level is the moment, the deficit is the daily worst-case penalty.
So, Cara has a deficit. Now what? Well, the firm must require her to satisfy it as promptly as possible. And how does she actually do that? With net deposits. She's got to wire in cash, deposit securities, or do something else that increases her intraday margin level by an amount equal to the deficit. Bottom line, she owes that cushion some serious padding.
So, the crucial point is, how long does she actually have to fix this before things get really ugly? 5. That is the magic number. The close of business on the 5th business day after the deficit occurs. If she leaves it unsatisfied past this firm deadline, oh boy, the real trouble starts.
And enter Sam, the supervisor. Sam is the guy who brings the hammer down. But wait, actually scratch that. Here is another massive exam trap. One single missed deficit past day 5 is not enough for Sam to penalize her. For the restriction to actually apply, the firm acquires both conditions. Cara must make a practice of failing to satisfy deficits promptly, and she must fail to satisfy a specific deficit past that 5th business day. If it's a one-off fluke, Sam stays in his office, sips his coffee, and minds his business. But if it's a habit and she misses that 5-day deadline, Sam is taking action.
And what exactly is Sam's action? 90, a 90-day restriction. Sam drops a 90-day calendar restriction straight onto Cara's account, starting right after that 5th business day, or until she finally pays up and satisfies the deficit.
But what does this 90-day restriction actually do in practice? Essentially, it limits her from digging a deeper hole. The firm prevents Cara from creating a new short position, increasing an existing short position, creating a new debit balance, or increasing an existing debit balance. You picking up on the theme here? It's a restriction on new exposure. The big exam trap here is thinking her account is just totally frozen. It's not. Closing a short position is fully permitted because, well, that reduces risk. Now, before we get to the recap, let's briefly touch on buying power. Buying power is simply the value of marginable securities Cara can purchase using her excess equity. Since the federal initial margin requirement is 50%, her excess equity supports roughly twice its amount in new purchases. The absolute key takeaway for the exam? The margin rule sets no separate buying power multiple for day trading anymore. Again, those old day trading rules are history. It's literally just standard buying power now.
All right, take a deep breath. We're going into a rapid-fire mental download to hardwire this into your brain. One takeaway per slide. Accelerating the pace. You ready? Number 1, the trigger. An IML-reducing transaction isn't just buying or selling. A withdrawal of cash or securities triggers it too.
Number 2, the measure. Ollie the ops guy looks at the absolute worst point of the day to calculate the deficit, not the closing balance. Remember, you absolutely cannot hide a midday disaster at the buzzer.
Number 3, the action. Cara has to satisfy that deficit as promptly as possible, usually through net deposits that bring her margin cushion back up where it belongs.
Number 4, the restriction trigger. Sam, the supervisor, only steps in if Cara has a defined practice of failing and she lets a deficit sit past the close of the 5th business day. You need both conditions for the hammer to fall.
And number 5, the penalty. When Sam finally drops that hammer, it's a 90-day restriction on new exposure only. No new shorts, no new debit balances. But closing a short position, totally fine. Okay, I'm going to leave you with one final provocative question to test your reflexes here. Let's say Cara withdraws cash tomorrow, triggering a deficit, and misses the deadline by day 6. But she has a perfectly pristine history before this. Does Sam issue the 90-day restriction? Think about the rule of both conditions we just talked about. The answer is no. Why? Because she doesn't have a practice of failing. Keep that logic razor sharp, review these concepts, and you are going to absolutely crush this section of your exam. Thanks for digging into this explainer with me today. You've got this.